Welcome back to Rhody Beat Report. I'm Justin Theriot, joined alongside Aaliyah Holloway. We have an exciting episode for you guys today. Of course, the Rams' first conference title since 1985, back when the CAA wasn't a thing for Rhode Island. It was the Yankee Conference. So congratulations to the players, the coaches, on their first CAA title and their first conference title, of course, since 85. And so we'll have some game reaction and analysis. We'll also be breaking down Rhode Island's first round playoff opponent and first playoff opponent since, again, the 1985 season. Is just so great to think how far they have come since then. It'll, of course, be Central Connecticut State, a regional rivalry for the Rams. And then we'll also be taking a look at the rest of the CAA, or the FCS playoff picture, just how important the home field advantage is for the Rams. And then we'll also take a look around the other playoff matchups that we'll see in the first round and who could be that second round playoff opponent for Rhode Island. So, of course, stay tuned for Rhody Beat Report. We have a great episode ahead of it for y'all, and we're excited to dive into it.
November 23rd, 2024 will forever be remembered by the University of Rhode Island as it marks the football team's first conference championship since 1985. To put that into perspective, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA was a best-selling album that year. Nintendo released Super Mario Brothers, and the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl the last time Rhody won a football championship. Nonetheless, let's recap how the Rhode Island Rams secured their new hardware in the 35-21 victory over the in-state Bryant Bulldogs.
So it was great to see Rhode Island not only get their first hardware in a while, but also win the state title, beating both Brown and Bryant this season. So, of course, like we just said, let's take a dive into it. And in the first quarter, we saw the Rams drive into the Bryant red zone on the opening possession, only for a fumble on an RPO exchange to lead to a turnover right out of the gate. Those red zone turnovers, always a killer for any team. And then as the first quarter winded down, we saw the all-reliable Ty Groff nail a field goal to put Rhode Island ahead 3-0. Early on in this game, we saw the Rams move the ball well with a mixture of run and quick passes, and to get those great playmakers featured on this Rhode Island offense into some open space. To start the second quarter, Rhode Island quickly put another field goal through, making it a 6-0 game, only for Bryant to then respond pretty quickly. It was a Meyer pass to Drew Montez, an 11-yard touchdown catch, putting Bryant up 7-6. Then, with only 5 minutes left in the first half, we saw Malik Grant a 13-yard rushing touchdown, an absolute banger of a day for Malik Grant. Bryant's running back, however, did respond with a 50-yard rushing touchdown of his own to put Bryant back up 14-13 as we went into halftime. So what we'll say is Rhode Island had an opportunity within the red zone before halftime again, but ultimately a throwaway pass by quarterback Hunter Helms got awry and resulted in another red zone turnover for the Rams in the back of the end zone. And then a fumble recovery on a strip sack by Wesley Neal got overturned into an incomplete pass, ensuring possession into the halftime. So the replay review, arm going forward, Rhode Island just coming up a little bit unlucky in that scenario. But when you turn over twice in the red zone, at that point you're kind of guaranteed to not be lucky when you're putting the decisions into the hands of the referees. In the third quarter, Rhode Island responded rather quickly again with Malik Grant, a 4-yard touchdown reception from Hunter Helms. And so for the second straight week, the Rhode Island Rams opened up the second half with a huge Malik Grant run. We saw a 40-yard run. It was a 47 carry right into that Bulldogs red zone. And so as soon as Bryant got the ball back after that Rhode Island score, Rhode Island snatched it back. It was Brandon Price with a 28-yard interception returned into Bryant territory, which led to another Malik Grant touchdown, and then a 2-point conversion on a Marquise Buchanan end around, putting Rhode Island up 28-14. Just a couple minutes into the fourth quarter, we saw Bryant, wide receiver Landon Ruggieri, have another touchdown reception, his 15th of the season. It was a fantastic season for Ruggieri. It was a 14-yard touchdown reception from Brennan Meyer, the Bryant quarterback. But prior to that, Rhode Island once again just misses out on a turnover at the start of a drive. It seemed as if Cole Brockwell had forced a massive fumble, but only for it to be ruled that the runner was down by contact. Second time this game, the referees determined that Bryant did not, in fact, turn the ball over. Rhode Island managed to come away with this win, even though they had a couple of possessions that were, put into the hands of the referees, which is always sort of difficult when you're actually playing, when the decision isn't made by you, but rather the officials, the league, and whatnot. So, after that play, there was 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And it started Rhode Island getting the ball, right, with 11 minutes left. And it was an 18-play, 8-minute, 22-second drive that ended in a Malik Grant 2-yard rushing touchdown. What a day it was for the Sacred Heart transfer. Malik Grant capping off what was a fantastic season with the Rams. That touchdown was his 4th of the day, and it capped off what was probably about as perfect as a drive as you can have if you're Rhode Island. You have the ball, plenty of time left in the game. You're only up 1 touchdown, so much on the line. State bragging rights, a CAA title, a chance in the playoffs, a chance to host a playoff game. So much pressure, but Rams, as cool as ever, they waste all that clock, giving the Bryant Bulldogs no chance to win this game. And then Devin Hightower had an interception with 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go, practically sealing it. It was the dagger in the game, and overall just a wonderful performance from the special teams, the offense, and the defense. Everybody executed to perfection, and like we've already said a handful of times today, Rhode Island was able to secure in-state bragging rights, the CAA trophy, and a home playoff game. As we have now had some time to bask in the team's first conference title as a member of the CAA since joining back in 2007, let's go some of our initial reactions and analysis, and of course, that means some notable team statistics. So this week, Rhode Island finally won the first down battle. They found a way to win a couple of these games without winning in this, big margin of it. This week they had 26 first downs, most of which actually came through the passing game, and then compared to Bryant's 16 first downs, almost all of which came through the passing game. So the passing game wasn't really finishing off the drives for Rhode Island, it was getting them down the field under quarterback Hunter Helms. On the ground for Rhode Island, of course, led by Malik Grant, Rhode Island rushed for 216 yards to Bryant's 104, whereas Bryant did lead the game in passing yards, 212 to 209, but really 3 yards, that's 9 feet, not much of a difference. Overall, the Rams had 425 yards of total offense, and that was on 73 plays. Well, Bryant only 316 on 52 plays. Bryant also lost the penalty battle, 10 penalties for a loss of 84 yards, while Rhode Island had 7 penalties for only 50. Rhode Island also won the turnover battle. They had just 2 turnovers, or Bryant turned it over twice to Rhode Island's 1, and they also outpossessed Bryant for nearly 35 minutes to just 25. And the last couple of marginal stats that the Rams did win this week was in the red zone. We already talked a little bit about those 2 unfortunate red zone turnovers for Rhode Island, but outside of that, the other 6 times the Rams went down into the red zone, they converted. So 6 of 8 on the day on those red zone opportunities. And on third down, both teams managed to go 8 of 12. So overall, pretty good day for both teams in those clutch positions, but didn't matter. Offensively, the Rams dominated, coming away with that 35-21 win. And now we'll look at that strong game by the special teams unit.
Yeah, so as Justin had mentioned, strong game by the special teams. So on a very windy day, the Rhody field goal PAT unit did not miss a single kick, which we saw as an issue a week ago. First time all season that punter Devin Walter did not see the field on a punt. While we did not see a breakaway kickoff return, the Rams special teams unit's quiet days are one of the unsung heroes of the game.
And then we saw some notable offensive performances as well. Hunter Helms had a great quote after the game with Nick Coy and Channel 6. He said that his team just makes him look great. All he has to do is turn around and hand it off to Malik Grant, who we described as a wonderful athlete. But that doesn't mean that Hunter Helms did not have a good to decent day himself. 19 of 29 with 209 passing yards. 1 touchdown pass on that dump off to, of course, the great athlete that is Malik Grant. And then, of course, 1 interception in the red zone that we talked about a little bit. Now, not the kind of mistake that you want to make, but it being his only mistake on the day is pretty good, especially considering he didn't take any sack. And there are some football nerds out there that'll tell you that a sack in some situations can be worse than an interception. So overall, a pretty good day for the Clemson grad transfer, making these all-important starts for the Rams down the stretch of the season. And like we just talked about, Malik Grant, a fantastic athlete. After the game, you saw a lot of clips of Coach Jim Fleming, talking about just how great it is to have Malik Grant, how great it is to have a guy like him being able to pound the rock. And pound the rock he did. 37 carries, just an unthinkable number really. 204 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. It tied Jaden McKenzie for the single-season rushing touchdown record at 13. He also had 2 catches for 16 yards and his second receiving touchdown of the season. So 4 total touchdowns from Malik Grant, and now here's 1 rushing touchdown in that playoff game away from setting the all-time single-season rushing touchdown record for the Rams, which would be a huge mark for him. And then Marquise Buchanan, another great week, over 500 yards. In these last couple of games. He had 8 catches for 84 yards, and like I just said, in November, 31 receptions, 472 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. So with 1 more game left to go in November, it's safe to say that there's a very good chance Marquise Buchanan could get over that 500-yard mark in just 1 month. And then we also saw Greg Gaines continue his success as a Ram, 4 receptions, almost 60 receiving yards. It was a strong performance as well from the offensive line, who did not allow a sack again. We saw that stretch in the middle of the season where they went a pretty long while before allowing another sack. And so, of course, today we saw last week I should say, we saw very minimal pressure, which allowed for another 200-yard passing game, which is all you need when your ground game is averaging over 5 yards a carry and over 200 rushing yards. So a really well-balanced attack for the Rams, and they were able to convert. Lastly, on that offensive line, we want to give a special shout-out to Damon McMillan Jr., who not only filled in well for our standout offensive lineman, Trey Alexander, but also had a fantastic game, just knocking the Bulldogs around. I mean, whenever you have to plug in a new player like that in such an important position, I mean, how many times do you watch an NFL game, a pro game, an SEC game where you just make one switch at the center and it throws off the whole team? Well, that wasn't the case for Rhode Island. So a special shout out to McMillan Jr. for staying ready and just putting out a fantastic performance in the last regular season game of the year.
And some defensive notables, we have linebacker Devin Hightower and Cole Brockwell combined for 10 total tackles, 1 quarterback hit, and Hightower snagging a key interception to seal the game, in addition to a pass breakup. Outside linebacker AJ Pena finished with a total of 3 tackles, half for loss and half sacks. With 10.5 sacks now on the season, Pena has solidified himself at 2nd all-time in career sacks at URI with 25 sacks, only trailing Frank Ferreira from 1995 to 1998, who finished with a 33. Outside linebacker Gabe Solomons had a solid performance, finishing with 5 total tackles. Defensive back Braden Price continues to be one of the most underrated defensive backs in the conference, as he had 3 total tackles and a 28-yard interception return that came 1 juke move short of penalty, potentially being a pick 6. That was unfortunate. But championship celebration after the game, the moment quarterback Hunter Helms took the final knee, the Rams stormed the field as winners of the CAA and Rhode Island State crown, as head coach Jim Fleming received a long-awaited Gatorade bath he's earned for turning around this football program. That was an incredible thing to see. The players were emotional, celebrating with one another, hugging, cheering, crying, embracing their families and the coaches. Everyone just happy to be there. The trophy was presented in the locker room before photos were taken outside with t-shirts ready and waiting. It was a moment that Fleming and the Rhode Island Rams football program had been waiting a long time for, and one that Rhody Nation will never forget. It was definitely something incredible to be a part of, being there, to see it all unfold. It was historic, and it was just, I'm lost for words.
I don't blame you for being at a loss of words. It was an emotional moment for a lot of people. Jim Fleming was here when the program, I hate to say it, but there was a time when Rhode Island football was nearly shut down. I mean, the field wasn't in great shape, and it took a huge commitment from outside donors to keep this program around, and a really big commitment from Jim Fleming. This was a guy who was a very good coach, and he could have taken another job at a program that, you know, had more historical success, had more funds, had a lot more going for it, but instead, he stuck around with Rhode Island. He pushed that rock up the hill and continued to push and push and push, and he's reached the mountaintop. It was a great picture taken by our team photographer, Connor Caldone, of Jim Fleming, like you said, getting that long-awaited Gatorade bath, and what a moment it was for Rhode Island to be presented with, the CAA T-shirts, the CAA trophy, all on the field of the Bryant Bulldogs. It's nice to do that on a rival's turf, now conference rival's turf, but also nice to just do it in state, be close to home. Family was there, everybody was there, all around. Just a beautiful moment and a really, really big moment for the Rhode Island football program as they start to lay the groundwork to potentially be a football school.
Yeah, no, and it's from, like, I've been here for a little bit, so I've seen the transition of the team, you know, going from not many wins, you know, and to now finally getting this conference, you know, championship. They've worked hard over the years, coaches, staff, everyone, and it's about time, you know, like, and we're so happy to see it.
You don't have to be afraid to say it. Rhode Island, there was times where this team went winless. There was times when this program had a one-win season, and even Fleming was around for those one-win seasons. So to be able to put it all together in a year as magical as this, I mean, these guys worked really hard for it. They really, really earned it. You talk about those, you know, waking up at 4:30, 5 a.m. in the spring, and you work through those cold, you know, March mornings, April mornings, and you work for months and months and months, and it's nice to see it all come together for these guys. It's a good moment for the coaches. It's a great moment for the players and for the family. It's a good moment for the school all around. Just, you know, how can you not be emotional about it? It's a big time moment for this program, and an even bigger moment was the selection show on Sunday. The Rams held a watch party where players and staff and supporters got to witness them receive an at-large bid in the round one as the 10 seed hosting, as we mentioned a couple times already, Central Connecticut State. And then the men got to head to the men's basketball game, which was, you know, a big game that I myself was able to be a part of on the FM broadcast. The men's basketball team was taking on the College of Charleston Cougars, a very, very respectable mid-major program, ironically a part of the CAA for basketball. Rhode Island, as you might know as a fan, is only a part of the CAA as a football member only. We talked about they joined the conference back in 2007 when the Atlantic 10, the conference that Rhode Island is in for every other sport, decided they no longer wanted to sponsor football. So it was pretty ironic to see the Rams taking care of more CAA competition here in Kingston, Rhode Island, as the men's basketball team completely dispatched of what is a good College of Charleston team, and that kind of allowed for the men's football team to, you know, take center stage, come on the court with only 5 minutes left to go. Rhode Island basketball up by nearly 40 points. We got to see Jim Fleming operate the cannon for the foam basketballs, the T-shirts. It was a magical moment. It was awesome to be a part of it in Media Row. And, you know, I remember on the broadcast I had a couple T-shirts land around me, and I was able to pick them up and turn around. And you have so many fans, little kids, you know, begging for these T-shirts and these foam basketballs. And you get to see just thousands of people in one little arena enjoying such a historic moment for the football team, and also basking in what was a great win for the basketball team. So hopefully the success that has just been in the air here in Kingston can sort of make its way into some of the other sports programs around campus. Upon conclusion of the 2024 regular season, the Rhode Island Rams are co-Coastal Athletic Association championships. This is due to the fact that their only loss this season came to the hands of Delaware, a team that is currently transitioning up to the FBS level. Thus, they have about 20 more scholarship players than anyone else in the CAA. So, Rhode Island ends the season as co-champs alongside the Richmond Spiders. Richmond got the automatic qualifier, but it doesn't take away from the fact that Rhode Island got their first conference championship since 1985 when the Rams won the Yankee Conference. So, with the playoffs right around the corner now and the bracket set, let's take a look at who is representing the CAA this year. And now, of course, since I just mentioned that Richmond and Rhode Island were the co-champions of the CAA this season, they will, of course, be representing the conference. But who else got an at-large bid? Well, first, we see Villanova getting in as the 11th seed this year, as well as New Hampshire just getting in. And unfortunately, for our friends in New York, Stony Brook will not be in the postseason this year. Their back-to-back losses to end the season sort of killed any playoff hopes they might have had. And William and Mary, a team that typically makes the postseason out of the CAA, well, they lost to Richmond in the final week of the season, so they're no longer in the postseason picture. Just goes to show just how important it is to win from week 1 to week 12 and keep your foot on the gas pedal all the way through the regular season in order to get that at-large bid. With your Rhode Island Rams being in the postseason for the first time since 1985, the playoff bracket looks a little bit different than it did way back then. So let's talk about it, right? So the first 8 teams, or first 8 seeds, I should say, they'll get home field advantage in the second round as well as a first round bye. And a lot of these teams are your typical FCS stalwarts, the powerhouses and whatnot. So of course you have Montana State, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, South Dakota, UC Davis, Incarnate Word, and Mercer and Idaho. Seeds 9 through 16, while these teams also got home field advantage, just did not get that first round bye. So all these teams will be playing on the road in the second round if they're able to come away with W. These teams include your CAA champions, like we've talked about, Rhode Island and Richmond, as well as CAA member Villanova. Drake and Tarleton State will also some of these teams. Montana, Illinois State, Abilene Christian, and New Hampshire, another CAA team, will all be those 9 through 16 teams getting those first round home games. But if they're able to win those games, they will go on the road to those 1 through 8 teams. And for Rhode Island, that will be Mercer. The final 8 teams to receive bids in this 2014 playoff field include Lehigh, Central Connecticut State, which will be Rhode Island's matchup, Eastern Kentucky, Southeast Missouri State, Tennessee State, Northern Arizona, UT Martin. So like I just said, November 30th, 12 o'clock at Meade Stadium, Rhode Island will play host to the NEC Conference champions who got that automatic bid out of that conference, Central Connecticut State. And now winner of that game will then go on to face Mercer, a very good team, a team that's already battle-tested, just having recently played Georgia.
SEC football champions enter this weekend with a 7-5 overall record, 5-1 in conference play, having won 4 straight games. With a 5-0 record at home, the Blue Devils find themselves in an uncomfortable spot, having gone just 2-5 on the road this season.
Yeah, not what you want. 2-5 on the road is a pretty ugly stat. But, of course, winning the NEC and winning 4 in a row is always a great recipe in order to get into the postseason. So let's take a look at some of their wins and some of their losses this season. Well, their wins include wins over Fordham, St. Francis, Mercyhurst, Wagner, Stonehill, Robert Morris, and Duquesne. So admittedly, the NEC is sort of a weaker conference compared to the CAA, so not really many impressive wins. As for their losses, they of course played FBS, Central Michigan, and Massachusetts. They did give FBS Massachusetts a pretty good run for their money, which looks even good after this weekend when Massachusetts went to SEC country and played Georgia pretty well for 3 quarters. They lost it a little bit, or a lot of it, in the fourth quarter of that game. But still a good performance from the Minutemen this weekend, making that loss a little bit more stomachable for the Blue Devils. Other losses for the Blue Devils include Yale, Dartmouth, and of course LIU, the only common opponent between these two schools. Rhode Island barely escaping LIU with a win this season. Now LIU, not a historically great program, and after that Rhode Island game, their season took a tailspin. So that loss, not very good on the resume of the Blue Devils. So now we'll take a look at the team stats for this Central Connecticut State team.
On average this season, CCSU averages 24.9 points per game, with opponents averaging just about 24 points per game. The Blue Devils average 323.5 yards of total offense per game, while their defense remains the team's strength in a similar fashion to Rhode Island. And the CCSU averages 180.2 passing yards to game to 143.3 rushing yards per game, with more rushing touchdowns this season, 18, than passing, 15.
And that's not something that Rhode Island hasn't seen before. They've seen plenty of well-balanced offense at this point in the season, both scoring-wise, yards-wise, and of course they've also seen plenty of very talented defense. So per attempt, the offense averages just 6.2 yards of passing versus just 3.7 yards per rush attempt. And that 3.7 mark is sort of where I want to look, because a lot of football people will tell you that you want to be at least 4. 4 signifies average, I guess. 5 is good, and 6 is, well, you're fantastic, you're great. But rushing obviously has not been too good for the Blue Devils this season. One of the strengths of this team is their passing rush. However, on this year, they averaged 3 sacks a game and 36 on the season. Central Connecticut State is rock solid on special teams, but not unstoppable. But it is worth noting that the Blue Devils have only scored touchdowns on 56% of their red zone trips, which is pretty abysmal. Rhode Island themselves have had a couple, or too many, I should say, drives that have resulted in turnovers in the red zone. But when you face a team that makes just as many mistakes, if not more mistakes than you, it always sort of makes you feel a little bit better about those shortcomings as a team. And now you might be worried about that Central Connecticut State pass rush, but we've talked about it a handful of times this season. The offensive line for Rhode Island has just been so great that you have my vote of confidence, and really the nation's vote of confidence, that Rhode Island should get the job done up front in the trenches to be able to stop that inept rushing attack of the Blue Devils, as well as sort of negate what is a good pass rush. Not that they won't have any impact on the game, but they should not be game-wrecking.
Some individual performances by the Blue Devils. Their quarterback, Brady Olson, leads the offensive with 15 passing touchdowns to 9 interceptions, 2,091 passing yards, and a 51.3 completion percentage, which is
subpar.
Yeah.
Yes.
To say the least.
To say the least.
Olson, who is 6'4" and 200 pounds, has the ability to run, but prefers to remain in the pocket.
Rhode Island's already seen their fair share of bigger quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks. Olson, pretty stereotypical, 6'4", 200 pounds. Might be an athlete, but again, like we've said a couple of times now at this point, what's great about playing in a conference as good as the CAA, what's good about playing with non-conference opponents like Brown and Minnesota, is you've already seen plenty of talented quarterbacks. Yeah. So Rhode Island should be okay against Brady Olson. And then let's take a look at some of the other people that get it done for the Blue Devils. In the backfield, it's Elijah Howard, who's averaging 83 yards a game this year, 833 yards on the season. He's got 8 rushing touchdowns, and he's averaging about 4 yards per carry, which is pretty run-of-the-mill. He has had some fumble issues, however, putting 4 balls on the ground this year, losing 2 to the defense. So apparently it is clear that his team has gotten a little bit used to recovering those balls, but of course you don't want to put anything to chance. And then we also see Jaden Turner and Donnie Marcus, who will also see some rushing opportunities, 363 and 229 rushing yards respectively. So just like your Rhode Island Rams and their 3-headed attack out of the backfield, that's kind of become just one guy. But regardless, just like Rhode Island, a three-headed monster out of the backfield for the Blue Devils this season.
Receiver, CCSU has 7 players over 100 yards this season.
Deep.
But they are led by senior Michael Plaskin, who has 46 receptions for 592 receiving yards and a touchdown in 2024. Watch out for number 2, Paul Marsh Jr., who averages 16.4 yards per reception and has 4 touchdowns on the season as the team's big play threat.
And the team has shown the ability to shut some of those big play threats shut down some of those big play threats throughout the season. Coach Yanni has done a great job with the defensive backs this season, and I'm sure that the defense will just have a way to maybe bracket him, double team him, prevent those guys from coming up with any big plays. Now, defensively for the Blue Devils, it's defensive back Kamal Clark, who is an absolute missile, similar to our very own Freddie Malay. He leads the team with an unthinkable 109 tackles for a defensive back. That just blows my mind. A very good player is Camille Clark. He also has 3 pass breakups on the season. And then defensive linemen Jalen Howard and Dan Totley combined for 17.5 sacks on the season. We talked a little about how great that pass rush for them is. So that front 4 getting it done, 22.5 tackles for loss between the 2 of them. And pass rush, a great pass rushing tandem that the Rams, of course, will have to be wary of all game long. The Blue Devils have a knack for punching the ball out. Recovering 16 fumbles, again, a pretty impressive stats, as well as 14 interceptions, So clearly, as we go through these stats, you kind of see how did Central Connecticut State end up in the postseason with only 7 wins? Well, it's their defense, their ability to force turnovers, their abilities to get sacks, and then, of course, where the offense has sort of been subpar in some aspects, that big playability can make up for it in the long run.
The most notable part of the FCS playoff picture is the Rams. Thanks to a 10-2 overall record, 7-1 in CAA, they've in fact landed at spot number 10, therefore receiving an at-large bid with home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. Because of the distance accommodations, Central Connecticut not only made for the opponent with the least distance, one that they get the opportunity to play at Meade Stadium.
So Rhode Island finishes their regular season undefeated at home since that illustrious 1985 season. So 6-0 at Meade this year, and let's take a look back at how it happened. Of course, there was the Week 1 miracle at Meade, the last-second touchdown from Devin Farrell to Sean Harris Jr. on one of the last plays of the game, a 20-17 win over Holy Cross. Then 2 weeks later, they followed it up with a win over Campbell at home, a 21-9 victory then. And then in Week 7, we saw them to defeat Brown by 10 points, 31-21 over the Brown Bears in the Governor's Cup to win it for the 5th time in a row. Week 9, they saw a 24-14 win over UMaine for homecoming. And then Week 10, a 37-28 win over the high-flying Monmouth Hawks offense for family weekend. And then in Week 12, it was a 20-17 win over Albany on Senior Day, as well as the Salute to Service Day. So to remain at Meade Stadium, playing off this energy and knowing that, they will be able to hold that playoffs through the daunting first round of the postseason. It's just going to be a massive advantage for the Rams. So if you're in town, your Thanksgiving is around the Rhode Island area, then take advantage of this wonderful week and extended weekend. We have Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and then a beautiful Saturday at Meade Stadium. As of now, the weather says it should be sunny, so should make a great day for some cold, brisk New England football in November, almost December. And how often do you get to say that about the Rams playing football in yearly December around that Thanksgiving time? Haven't been able to say it in a long time. So if you're in the area, make sure you come to Meade Stadium and take advantage of it and enjoy it.